Hello, meditators. Welcome to another episode of Manage Your Mind with me. Last episode, we spoke about creating a positive environment for ourselves, which is very important when it comes to doing this work because you want to be feeling focused. You want to have the time to sit down and focus. You want to feel safe in the space where you sit down and focus. So creating an environment where you feel safe and you feel home and you feel content is the easiest place to start. And I know sometimes life can get in the way and anxiety rises to the surface or sadness rises to the surface. But that should be indication that your body is saying to you, come on, let's meditate. Come on, let's transform those negative feelings. And eventually, when meditation becomes a coping mechanism, you have found a way to observe emotion and transform the emotion and let the emotion go and flutter away. And I remember when I was younger, constantly felt the need to go out and party and to drink and to dance and be around people and be out the house because I knew if I didn't go out then I'd be on my own and I'd have to face those emotions inside of me and I'd have to face my inner trauma and demons. So I tried my very hardest never to stay in, never. And I remember one night, none of my friends were going out. They probably hungover, something like that. And I went out on my own, dressed up, got on the train, and I went out and I went to a club on my own. I got drunk, I danced, and I felt extremely unwanted, unneeded, irrelevant. So I drank more to the point where I couldn't really tell you about that night. It was just another night. And that led me on a journey of excess. Going here, going there, partying here, partying there, meeting this person, meeting that person, smoking this, smoking that, buying this, buying that. Just really, really trying to block myself from sitting down and facing what darkness, what sludge, what vileness I felt inside. A lot of hurt, a lot of insecurity, a lot of shame, a lot of pain. And then that led to panic attacks. And I would walk down the street and I would feel my heart begin to race. And then I would focus on that heartbeat and I would let it consume me. I would try and push it away and fight it, and it'd just get worse and worse and worse. And then I remember a few times, like knowing that my legs were going numb, and I'd forgotten how to walk. So I sat down until I could feel my legs again. It was a good half an hour, 45 minutes before I could get up and start walking again. I remember this one time in Manchester when I was sat by the canal, the panic attack started again. It was happening all inside of me and it was all interior because everyone around me also by the canal on the benches, they couldn't notice anything wrong. I remember looking at this person on the other side of the canal and telling them to come over. And I remember saying, I'm having a panic attack. Could you please just sit with me and talk to me until it goes? The more that we avoid our demons, the more that we avoid those dark thoughts, those evil thoughts, those heavy emotions, the heavier they become. And the more that we fight them and push them away and wrestle with them, the heavier they become. And they just come back and torture us even more and bring back a huge army with them. We're back. We're back to torture you. We're heavier, we're better, we're bigger. And then I found meditation, where I learned to sit, and I learned to watch, and I learned to love, and I learned to hold them, and I learned to keep the doors open so they could leave. Because the more that we fight them, the more doors we close inside of ourselves, keeping them in. Once you learn the technique to be able to sit, breathe, and stay open, like guests in a hotel, they check in and check out eventually. But you ain't kicking them out the door. They leave when they feel loved. They leave lighter. They leave transformed. I really wish I knew then what I knew now. All of the suffering that I felt, all of the time I spent, all of the money I spent, all of the aimlessness, craving, love me, like me, love me, want me, like me, love me. Now we've already spoken about the causes of suffering, and those are to want something, to not want something, and to want something to be different. Parallel to those run attachments, wanting something and getting something, and it not being the thing that we thought we wanted causes suffering. And we get attached to an image or an outcome as to what we thought we were getting, and when it doesn't turn out to be what we thought we were getting, that causes great suffering. Wanting something and not being able to have it causes suffering of craving that one thing, whether it be a holiday. I want to get out of here, I need to get out of here, and we can't if we have barriers, and therefore we have an attachment to the thing that we can't have, and then that causes great suffering that we can't have it. It could be a person. You convince yourself that you're madly in love with this person and you become obsessed with them, and then they turn around and say, I'm sorry, I'm already taken, or I'm sorry, I don't feel the same, or they say yes, I would love to be with you, I would love to date, and then you realize you'd created a story for them, you'd created a story for you both. Very often that story doesn't live up to the expectation, because fantasy is completely different to reality. What my hair's doing right now. See, an attachment to my hair. An attachment to a thing. Maybe you can afford this thing, but in your imagination, in the story that you've created, in the image that you've created, this thing is glowing. Whether it be a bracelet or a watch or a car, it's glowing. And how soon after obtaining that object does that shine rub off, once you've utilized it a few times? Quite soon. At least it does for me, for sure. There's a little story. So this old man, and he has a garden, and he fills the garden with cages. And every day he goes out with a net, and he runs out and starts swooping in the air, trying to catch the birds to put in his cage, catch the butterflies, the squirrels, because he wants to keep that beauty. He wants his garden to be the most beautiful garden, filled with the most beautiful things. So he does. He catches some butterflies and pops them in a cage, catches some more and pops them in a see-through tub. He catches some robins and puts it in a cage, and a squirrel, a mouse, and he just fills his whole garden with animals fluttering painfully. The squirrels look at him sadly, and the mice hide out of fear. He invites people over and he says, "Come and look at my garden. It's filled with the most amazing creatures." And they look into his garden, in his prison that he's created for himself. And the people don't see the beauty. And he says, "Well, aren't you impressed?" They said, "There is no happiness here. There is no beauty here." He says, "What do you mean? Look at it. Look at all these beautiful creatures." And they say, "Yeah, they are beautiful, but they're not free." From that day on, he opened up all the cages and set them free. He opened up the boxes, and the butterflies flapped away desperately. He started to prepare his garden, fresh, fertile soil. He started to plant beautiful seeds like roses and daffodils. He put some trees and hung nuts on the trees. And at first, none of the animals wanted to come to his garden because they were afraid of him, and they thought that he'd capture them again and keep them captive. The man was sad. He went inside until one day he heard some tweeting, and slowly he got up and he went to the window and he looked outside, and his garden was filled with every creature. There was worms wiggling in the soil, and caterpillars climbing the trees, and birds pecking at the nuts, and butterflies and wasps and bees. And the man was so happy. He just watched them, admired them from afar. So back to attachment. I think we're attached to keeping the good things in our lives. And we meet someone we become fascinated with, and it's rare because they're very interesting and you've never met anyone like that before. But the more that we force them to stay, the more that we lock them in a cage, the more that we suffocate them, the more likely they're going to flutter away, or feel numb inside, or feel sadness inside, or suffocated, or frightened. And attachments live in the past and the future. It's all what ifs and what has beens. And we're also attached to our own bodies. We're very obsessed with youth, staying youthful. And that's why people have facelifts and plastic surgery. We'll never be younger than we are today. So we must enjoy our body today. We must take care of our body today. We must take care of what we put inside of our bodies. We mustn't be afraid of the body changing. We mustn't fight the body changing, because naturally, like everything else, it's impermanent. and like everything else, it's constantly changing, rather than learning and taking time to accept our bodies and love our bodies. Instead, we're harming them, going on sunbeds, scorching our skin, but we're not learning to love ourselves that way. We're not learning to look at ourselves and appreciate every single inch of our body. We are in a race to fight the inevitable. We're pumping steroids into our bodies. We are filling our lips. We are filling our cheeks. We're not loving. You're attached to an image of what we would like to be, rather than staying in the moment and appreciating what we have now. And what we have now is beautiful. What we have now is organic. What we have now is something to appreciate. What was, what was, what was. What if, what if, what if. And that's where the suffering comes. We get attached to places, the place where we grew up, the place where our grandparents live or lived. I remember when I was younger, I was surrounded by fields. There was these lush green fields, and we used to throw little festivals as kids on those fields. And we used to go treasure hunting, ride our bikes, and once got a little motorbike, and we used to go on the fields with the motorbike. And one day they sold those fields and they made lots of bungalows. And I remember the streets that were there before hated it. The fact that these green fields were going to be built on, and homes were going to be built for other people, and there were going to be other strangers around. And they were very reluctant, rather than seeing it as that's more opportunities to meet people. That's more opportunity for the community to grow, develop. So we get attached to people and places and memories and things. We get attached to our mobile phones. And I had a really good mobile phone this time last year, and the scooter ran over it and crushed it. The screen had cracked. It wasn't working and it couldn't be repaired. But I was fine with it because I accepted it straight away. It was like, well, that's that gone. Throw it in the bin. Get a cheap phone. Let's carry on. Never mourned it. I never clung for it or craved for a better phone. I'm going to leave it there. A little introduction to attachments and how they cause suffering. So on Sunday, I'll be releasing the next step of our meditation. It will be longer than the other ones that we've done. I hope you get a lot out of it. Changing our mind, managing our mind, controlling, taking back control. Because our mind's been in control of us for many, many years. I hope you're having a lovely week. And I hope you have a great weekend. See you soon.